I am a alma mater, as you know. Well, my alma mater is Otago University. I went there. I've got a couple of alma maters in actual fact. I did my undergraduate degrees at Otago University. I did my masters at Victoria. Don't condemn me for it, but there you go. And I've always had a fairly affectionate regard for the old place. I guess, as you do when you're growing up and you leave school or universities and things like that. And when I was at Otago University, the students who were regarded as sort of top of the social pops, who were regarded as the movers and the shakers, the intellects, the ables, the ones who would go on and do something with their lives where the rest of us were just sort of milling around the trough somewhere, were medical students. And you had to be very, very bright to get into med school. Then they started up med school in Auckland as well, which and sort of Dunedin people, and particularly Otago University types, turned up their nose at and went, oh. And sort of always regarded Auckland med school as a slightly inferior institution. Well, both now, you would expect institutions to be turning up their nose at the latest kid on the block, which is Waikato University, who, as you know, have been given the green light now to proceed with a third medical school in this country. As I understand it, it's going to be for those who have degrees already, presumably, but not exclusively, in science-based subjects. But it wouldn't be exclusive, I wouldn't imagine. And they're going to do a 4-year course at Waikato University. From what I can see at the moment, the government's going to put in almost $90 million. The other $150 million is going to be put in by Waikato University and philanthropic agencies. And after a business case was surmised, because certainly ACT weren't greatly in favour of establishing a new med school in Hamilton, after a business case was surmised and completed, the story was that it marginally favoured Waikato over increasing the teaching facilities at Auckland and Otago. Now, as you would expect, in Auckland they don't care, really, to be honest with you, as a wider area, but in a place like Dunedin, which is less than a tenth of the size, they've taken it pretty personally, and there's, in the last 48, 72 hours, been a fair bit of upset coming out of Dunedin, and as you would expect, because Dunedin's not growing, it's being subsumed by the growth and by the business escalation of central Otago and the lakes area, so it's getting trumped by its own. So they're a bit sensitive about these sorts of things. But nevertheless, it is going to happen, and that's the end of it. The really interesting thing is that Labour, who oppose it, and obviously the two Dunedin MPs, based MPs, Ingrid Leary and Rachel Brooking, have particularly led that charge there, aren't saying that they'd reverse it. Now that's interesting. And in fact, they've specifically ruled out not reversing it in the meantime, because the theory will be that it'll be so far advanced by the time that Labour get into power that there would be no point in doing so. But to join us about this, and somebody who has been critical about it and says that it doesn't make sense and the business case is wrong, is our next guest, Ian Powell. Now, Ian was, when I think he was in charge of this, I had a lot to do with, in actual fact, Ian, when I was a younger member of Parliament. He was with the senior doctors. Now, I can't remember what their descriptive name is, but he's always taken interest in education. He obviously is a clinician himself, or was a clinician himself, and he joins us now. Ian, welcome to the show. What was the organisation you were head of, mate? Just quietly, remind me again.
Well, one of your former colleagues back in your New Zealand First days, Graham Harding, nicknamed us the Alphabet Union. And that's because the name was the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists.
That's the one.
Which, as you can guess, was a name developed by a committee. Look, I think that I think you said I was a clinician. I'm not. But I did represent them for many years. But my degree is primarily in politics and history.
So you were more of a lobbyist then, were you?
Oh, well, no. Well, I was the executive director of the union. Yeah. So like a chief executive. Yeah.
But you did lobby though, didn't you? Because I remember
Oh,
being
yeah,
in both the
lobbying was an
national.
important part of our activities. Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
if you hadn't have done your job. Listen, just before we go into what we're going to talk about, lobbying is interest at the moment. Um, if I've always regarded lobbying as really part of the political process because you're a very useful check upon bureaucrats and the facts or information that they like to use. Is that your experience as well?
Mm. Oh, very much so. I think there's a difference between organisations, whether they be unions, whether they be professional bodies or sector groups, um, doing lobbying as part of their work, and paid lobbyists. I think there is a difference. And but I think in terms of various representative bodies covering health and the rest of the economy or society, it is a very important role because a lot of views are contestable,
Mm,
and if they are contestable, there needs to be visibility to the contesting.
mm.
And sometimes, if you apply a dialectical approach, if you have a thesis and then you have an antithesis, you may well get a synthesis out of it. Touch wood.
Well, that's the perfect solution, but it usually doesn't happen that way. You've got to usually choose one side or the other, depending upon your
Yeah, well,
ideological or your
that's right.
political viewpoint.
I'm being a bit sort of ideal type.
Yeah, you are really, but it doesn't matter. Listen, God, if you can't be idealistic when you're you know, when can you be? Listen, mate. Medical school at University of Waikato has been found to have a slightly better cost-benefit ratio than other options, although only slightly. And the government moved ahead with its decision to start that particular medical school at Waikato. You say it's the wrong decision. Why?
Well, I don't. Well, before we get onto the business case, I start from the standpoint that if you're going to make a significant decision like this, you must have a good process of engagement to make sure you make to get the range of views, give them all due consideration. And I think that has been the opposite in this case for some time now. I think that it's been an alignment of interests, which I detail in the blog I wrote that I guess you've read, and work done by summarising a lot of this by Guy and Espiner on Radio New Zealand, or actually it might not have been him, but by Radio New Zealand, and not Brian Edwards, Bryce
Bryce
Edwards
Edwards.
in the Bryce Edwards in the Integrity Institute.
Mm.
But there's a close alignment between political parties, lobbyists, the university that has shaped and influenced this decision making, and
Well, to be
too
honest
much.
with you,
And
mate,
that leads on
that
to
seems to be policy making in general. Listen, I don't have a problem with that alignment if you get to the right conclusion or the right answer. But I'm interested in why you think this is the wrong answer.
well, I think what I'm saying is it's more likely to be the wrong answer because of the process. Now,
Mm.
the other thing the government did, and you'll be familiar with this in your time, well, not just in your time in Parliament, but subsequently as well, watching it, that if the government of the day, and this is, but all governments are guilty of this, wants to have an issue not scrutinised as much as would otherwise be the case, they do a media dump on a Friday night,
Mm.
and hope sort of pretty much that by the time of the weekend is over, other news will be coming up, and that's what they did with the business case material. Now, I wrote my blog at the time of that dump. So I had a cursory look of it, but not a substantial look at it. Since then, it's been analysed a bit, and I think that there's a lot of speculation in it. If you look at the capital costs of actually the two universities working together for an initiative they've been proposing since 2017 of a joint school of rural practice. On capital costs, that would be much, much less than the Waikato proposal. The second thing is that on the operational side of it, they are based essentially on assumptions, and they miss out some things in the costings too, the cost of training. They compare a 4-year degree with a 5-year degree, and if that's all you compare, the 4-year degree costs less.
Mm.
But if you then look at the 3 years at least you need to actually get the graduate degree on top of that, then that changes the equation. So there's things about it that are suspect. And they do, the only conclusions they make is a comparison with one rural hospital, rural medical school in Wollongong, which is interesting, but it's not enough to base a definitive comparison. So there's a lot of speculation in the costings. And if we'd had a better process, we could have teased out these more. They might have come down to what we've ended up with, but we didn't have a good process, and so we'll never know. And there are big question marks in the business case.
Okay. But the only question I've got, I mean, I imagine most New Zealanders is this going to lead to more doctors being available in New Zealand, particularly in rural and provincial areas? Is it going to plug the gap in my neck of the wood where we are in postcode lottery stuff down here? And is there anything in what you've seen from that announcement that would suggest the opposite of meeting that need?